Welcome from the Bohemian Triangle, which is located approximately 45 miles southwest of Minneapolis-St. Paul. In this area lie the counties of Rice, Scott, and Lesueur. By the 1870s, Minnesota's largest Bohemian Czech concentration was well established in the triangle of these three counties. Why did our ancestors decide to leave their Bohemian homeland and come to the US and eventually Minnesota? Some of the more general reasons included Czech land could no longer support family size, an agricultural depression, compulsory military service, and most importantly, the desire for better economic opportunities. Additionally, times were changing, making permission to travel available and advertising by shipping lines more abundant. Also, letters coming back from the US to the Bohemian countryside. This map shows the Minnesota Territory map in 1857, 1 year before Minnesota would become a state. Approximate location of the Bohemian Triangle is shown with the triangle in the lower eastern portion of what would eventually become the state of Minnesota. Bohemian settlements in the Bohemian Triangle. The first one I'm going to talk about is New Prague, or Nova Praha. It's considered to be the oldest Czech colony in Minnesota. Actually, a German, Anton Philipp, who was credited as the first white settler in the area in 1856. But within months of Philipp's arrival, Bohemian immigrants were arriving with the following surnames: Vertus, Borak, Hansel, Stepka, and Bruzek. This slide is showing the east entrance into New Prague on State Highway 19, proudly displaying the Czech flag. This area was known as part of the Big Woods, an area that was approximately 40 to 50 miles wide and almost 100 miles long. So it was a very difficult area to initially settle in. This gateway shows the proud Czech heritage that is still in our community. St. Wenceslaus Church in New Prague was completed in 1907 and was the third church that was built. There was also a school that was built, and that was where the settlers, many of them, the children or students, would first learn the English language as they spoke Czech at home. St. Wenceslaus Cemetery, predominantly Bohemian ancestry. During our Czech 100 celebration, many rows of immigrants were marked with Czech flags. There were some rows that were just Czech flags, and over the general area of the Bohemian Triangle and 11 cemeteries, we had over 3,000 graves marked with small Czech flags. This is the Czech National Cemetery in New Prague. It's much smaller than St. Wenceslaus. This cemetery was basically started for non-Catholic and freethinkers. Hotel Broge was completed in 1898 for Wenceslaus Broge and was designed by architect Cass Gilbert, who also did the Minnesota State Capitol and the Treasury Building in Washington, D.C. The building currently serves as an event center. Prior to becoming an event center, it was known as Schumacher's Hotel and was known across the country and even internationally. The Czech Heritage Club originated in 2002 as an outgrowth of Czech language and culture classes taught by Marian Topek. The club has a presence at many festivals and puts on Czech-related programs throughout the year. The club represents the communities of New Prague, Montgomery, Lonsdale, and Vesely. This photo is showing the Czech Heritage booth at the International Festival in Minnesota. The club sells many Czech-related items, including its Czech traditions / cookbook and fresh-baked kolačky and zelníky. Shown on the far right is Mart Kuchera, who is located up in the St. Paul area. Mart Kuchera is the honorary consul of the Czech Republic for the states of Minnesota, Iowa, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Mart has been very involved with getting the cities in the Bohemian Triangle very in touch with counterparts in the Twin City area, and specifically Sokol and St. Paul. On the left is our cookbook, A Taste of Czech Tradition. Besides recipes, there's a lot of other information, specifically about Czech traditions and some language also. It's a very big selling item for us at area festivals. And on the right is George Makishka, who is our genealogist for the Czech Heritage Club. At present time, George has somewhere around 175,000 individuals in his database, and is always a person that's contacted when we have our booth set up by many people interested in their Czech ancestry. On the left, you see the New Prague Czech singers performing during an annual Czech harvest festival in New Prague, known as Dožinky Days. In the background, you see a sign for cheese curds and corn dogs, but don't be fooled. At these festivals, you can find pamachka, you can find zelniki, you can find pork dumplings and sauerkraut, you can find jedernitsi, so many Czech favorites. On the right is the trademark for the local radio station, who is known as K-Czech and is a big supporter of area Czech-related events. Next on our slide will be a video describing Dožinky, the Dožinky Festival in New Prague. And it'll be a short video, but it'll give you a little bit of a taste of what the festival is like.
Betty Thompson here, member of the Festival Fanatics. We make it our mission to share with you the festivals that you will not want to miss, like this one. Saturday, September 21st will be the day to remember in New Prague. Dožinky is a Czech harvest festival patterned after the Old Country original. During the festival, Main Street in New Prague is transformed into an open-air market with vendor booths lining the sidewalks, where you can sample tasty treats, including traditional Czech dishes. New Prague City website shares that both children and adults will enjoy the special events planned for the day, including many demonstrators and entertainers. Be sure to stop by the Czech Village and the Czech Heritage Club. Authentic Czech dancers and singers will also share their talents. Experience the Dožinky Festival in New Prague on September 21st.
The next city that I'm going to introduce you to in the Bohemian Triangle is Montgomery. Now, Montgomery doesn't sound Czech, but the initial settlement, which was approximately 2 miles to the west, was actually named Budějovice. The location changed when the railroad was surveyed. Between 1856 and 1860, some of the Czech families who settled in this area had surnames of Dolish, Rinda, Brabec, Kotek, Factor, Bushta, and Skuzaček. This picture is showing the location of that cemetery, which was the settlement Budějovice. And you can see a sign out front of the cemetery. And that sign in Czech states, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And you can see the church in the background and a portion of the cemetery. Here's a close-up view of the church itself. And there's a sign in front that says, "Original area of Budějovice," and then cemetery 1855 to 1868. Even though it just is saying to 1868, that was basically the settlement, and people of Czech heritage to this day are still buried in this cemetery. This happens to be one of my favorite headstones, and it's in the Montgomery Calvary Cemetery. A beautiful monument. You can see pictures of the people that are buried here. Most of the verbiage on the monument is in Czech. A large number of headstones around the Bohemian Triangle are still in the Czech language. South of Montgomery, about 3.5 miles, is the Bohemian National Cemetery. And then the next cemetery that I'm showing you is the Trebon Cemetery, and that's located southeast of Montgomery. Includes a church, cemetery, and a one-room schoolhouse that's no longer used as a schoolhouse. Montgomery prides itself as the Kolački capital of the world. This past year was the 88th annual celebration, making it one of the oldest ethnic celebrations in the state of Minnesota. Pictured, you can see the Queen and the princesses that were elected for this particular celebration. Frankie's Bakery, a mainstay of Montgomery, Um, Probably was the namesake for starting kolachkis in Montgomery. On a typical kolachki day weekend, they'll make 1,800 dozen kolachkis to sell over the weekend. The family currently is in its fourth generation at the bakery in Montgomery. This picture shows the Sokol, Minnesota puppets that actually came down from Sokol and St. Paul to take part in the Kolachki Day Parade. Pictured here are some of the previous candidates for Queen and Princesses, and typically that pageant takes place in Montgomery prior to Kolachki Days at the American Legion Club. Montgomery also celebrates a couple other aspects of Czech heritage. On the left, you see the king for the Massapus celebration that takes place prior to the start of Lent. And a recent activity that started about 3-4 years ago is the raising of the maypole, and that's to celebrate the arrival of spring and the end of winter. The next video that you're going to see is going to be a video at Frankie's Bakery and talking about the celebration of Kolachki Days in Montgomery.
They are a Czech delicacy. They are made out of a sweet dough.
Each morning that Frankie's Bakery opens its doors,
This is my dad's family right here.
a family reunion takes place.
This was my dad's pride and joy. Besides us, of course.
Jean Frankie, her brother Bob, and other family members are carrying on a tradition that dates back to their grandfather's childhood in Czechoslovakia. In 1914, he moved to Montgomery, Minnesota with their grandma and bought this bakery.
She said she was only going to stay in Montgomery, this little town of Montgomery, for a year. She ended up passing away here in 1985, so that was a very long year for her.
It was the dough that got her to stick around. For more than a century now, the Frankies have been making kolachkis using the same mixers and ovens that Grandpa used. The 2-inch sweet dough squares get a heaping tablespoon of filling before they're baked. Jean learned to fold these before she learned to fold laundry. And how many of these can you do in a minute?
I would say maybe 20.
The delicacies have become so popular that the town was given the title of Kolachki Capital of the World. Kolachki Days take place the last weekend in July, and there's even a kolachki eating contest. The Frankies will bake up to 1,800 dozen kolachkis just for that weekend. They're also willing to teach anyone who's willing to learn.
Ready? Go.
Oh, that's my prettiest one yet. I'm not getting any faster, but they look pretty.
What's inside is apple, apricot, raspberry, prune, or poppy seed, which is an acquired taste. The flavors are written in Czech as well as English for first-timers who happen to stop by.
This is your first kolachki.
This is my first kolachki.
What do you think about it?
It's delicious.
It's a reaction the Frankies have grown used to over the years at a place where tradition meets taste.
We have a lot of people that keep coming back because it's part of their traditions, their family life. Their grandmothers made them for them, and they still want that little taste of home.
The third settlement that we're going to talk about in the Bohemian Triangle is Vesely. In the late 1860s and early 1870s, a group of people moved to a wooded area 8 miles east of New Prague. The first settler who recorded his claim was Blaže Stepan, who immigrated from the Treban district in Bohemia. Some other early family surnames included Pavek, Žižka, Lapach, Trinka, and Lamach. The picture on the left is showing the inside of the Most Holy Trinity Catholic Church in Vesely. A beautiful church with intricate wood carvings. And you can still see family names, family name tags on the pews from when the church's early beginnings took place. And those name tags were never removed. They're still on the pews. The picture on the right is the St. John's Cemetery. And Vesely, even though it's a very small village, around 700 inhabitants, it also has a second cemetery, and that's the Holy Trinity Cemetery. On the left, you can see advertising for the annual Vesely Hoedown. This past August, Vesely had their 55th annual hoedown this year. And that hoedown included a polka mass, pork and dumpling dinner, homemade treats, church tours, and music from 12 to 6 p.m. I didn't mention earlier, but Montgomery is one of the oldest celebrations, ethnic celebrations in the state of Minnesota. And Montgomery had its 88th annual celebration this past year. Here you can see a picture of homemade baked goods that parishioners brought to the church festival, the hoedown, for sale. And many people look forward to these each year to be able to purchase them and take them home with them. And you'll see many different Czech delicacies that are shown here for sale. The third video that you're going to see is showing the Vesely hoedown. The last settlement in the Bohemian Triangle that I'm going to talk about is Lonsdale. And Lonsdale is a little different than the other three settlements that I talked about. Lonsdale actually started out in the late 1800s as a small settlement of farmers that built a church and called the area Trondheim, named after a city in Norway. But shortly after, a number of Bohemian families migrated to this area. And up until a few years ago, Lonsdale probably had one of the higher percentages of Czech families in the area, even though it doesn't quite carry the same traditions as the other cities that were mentioned, but it's still very much a Czech village. Once again, railroads played a part, and on July 16th of 1902, a grand opening of the town of Lonsdale was held. Why I say this played a major part is Vesely was looking at connecting a rail line to the new Prague area, but also looking at another rail line. While they were making a decision, a farmer in what was to become the Lonsdale area said he would donate land for a train depot. And that's the decision that made the train line go through Lonsdale. One of the most interesting pictures I ever came across was a home being moved from Vesely by steam engine to the Lonsdale location because of the railroad. And the people in that house realizing that Lonsdale was probably going to be the city of growth in the future. Lonsdale has a Czech National Cemetery. It's actually a very small cemetery. Still doing a little research on this, but the majority of the stones are one family name, and that's the Vikla family. But the major cemetery is the Calvary Cemetery, and you can see this photo showing that cemetery along with the Immaculate Conception Catholic Church that's located in Lonsdale. Lonsdale, their annual celebration is known as Community Day. And you can see grand marshals in the parade in the one photo. And on the right, you can see the local Lonsdale ambassadors that are elected for that celebration. Finally, the Czech Heritage Club is proud to represent all four communities in the Bohemian Triangle. Again, the communities being New Prague, Montgomery, Vesely, and Lonsdale. You can see the sign on the right describing some of the activities of the Czech Heritage Club, including guest speakers, special programs, genealogy as mentioned earlier, and demonstrations that could be concerning dumpling making, mushroom hunting, or a lot of other Czech heritage related activities. And then the final slide is showing a group of people that were involved with the 218 Czech 150-25 celebration. In this celebration, we had a special bishop come from California. His name was Bishop Peter Esterka. He's no longer with us, but he performed a mass in Czech for us. During the celebration, we had cemetery tours. We had a taste of Czech and Slovak that was part of the presentation. We also had Czech folk dancing and singing. We had a Czech children's culture camp, Battle of the Czech Bands, and we had a local brewery make a special beer for us that we called Stolety Pivo, meaning century beer. It was a great celebration, and the Czech Heritage Club was proud to be a big participant in this overall activity. Thank you.